You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, nutrition, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere, anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your hosts, Dr. Justin Marchegiani and Barris Harvey, as they answer your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, this is Dr. Justin. Welcome back to Beyond Wellness Radio. Again, we have our guest today, Evan Brand from NotJustPaleo.com, and we're really fortunate to have you on the show today. Evan, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Justin, and probably 10 times better because you and I just got to talk and hang out for an hour beforehand. So
that was awesome. Great experience. I'm looking forward to repaying the favor here.
Yes, sir.
So, Evan, tell me a little bit more about you. How did you get into this space?
It started out in college. I realized that the nurturing of my grandparents and my parents and all that had been shielding me from the reality of becoming a man. And I realized that once you get your first taste of real stress of being an adult, that it tends to put an impact on your health. And so I was working at UPS third shift to pay for college. They had this pretty cool program there where you get 100% of your tuition paid for at the University of Louisville. So I thought, cool, I'm going to try it out. And I'm going to go into business school. And I had all these dreams and all that. And I've always been an entrepreneur. I started out selling hot fries in middle school to all the kids, going to Sam's Club and buying them for 15 cents a pop and selling them for $1. So I had this entrepreneurial mindset from the very beginning, and eventually transitioned that into other things as I got older. But really, once I was having trouble getting out of bed, it was 3 p.m. when I was waking up. I was having trouble getting out of bed. My shift at UPS would start at midnight or 12:30 even. I mean, it was ridiculous. I was killing myself, literally. And I just kind of got fed up with it. My acne was out of control. My gut was out of control. I got the official quote-unquote diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome. So it was just sort of a combination of all these things that really started to add up. And I got fed up with being told that all I could do was take acid blockers and take – I don't even know what all. I mean, just ridiculous recommendations that had nothing to do with what was actually the problem. So I think often the best teachers are the ones that struggled themselves with their health. And so I'm kind of the perfect candidate for that.
Totally makes sense. So how was your transformation? Like, what was it like? So you had all these issues, you had some of the IBS, you had the skin issues. What were some of the first steps that you took to kind of get better and heal yourself?
Well, I had a friend who was into amateur bodybuilding. And so I took this super high protein approach, just tons of chicken breast and green beans and broccoli and rice and pasta at the time because, you got to be high carb, right, to be an athlete. So I put on a pretty good amount of weight. I went from 120 pounds to about 170 in about a year or two. So 50 solid pounds and stayed relatively lean, but my stomach was still screwed up. And then I found out, pasta has gluten. Gluten tears up your stomach. And so I pulled it out, and then magically all of a sudden my acne was not nearly as bad, and I wasn't running to the bathroom with diarrhea. And I was kind of like, whoa, this is ridiculous. One little tweaking of the diet, pulling out it was a food group, man. It really was. Pulling out that food group of pasta was enough to make me feel better. So that was kind of the catapult into, I guess, what you would call the alternative health space. I hate that it's called alternative, but that was my entry point. And then from there on, delving into supplements, delving into herbs, adaptogens, smart drugs. I mean, I've done the gamut of, float tanks and acupressure mats and just anything and everything that may make me better or feel better or think better. I'm down with that. So
what was your experience from people around you and your healthcare providers when you're like, yeah, I'm going to just cut out this food group called grains? What was your experience? Was there blowback?
There always is. I mean, even my grandma, Evan, you need to eat. You're going to get too skinny. You need to eat some bread. Grandma, I'm fine. Look, I promise, And so there was a little bit of blowback, but not so much from the medical profession because I just quit seeing them. So I didn't have the opportunity to go back and waste my money saying, hey, look, I'm better. Here's what you need to teach your people. So I'm curious to what they would have said, though.
Isn't it amazing how from certain people, I find this when you're telling your story to people that feel guilty, the response is like, oh, isn't that extreme? You just need a little more balance or moderation in your life.
Right.
It's like,
And
well, it's like try telling Superman that he just needs a little bit more moderation with kryptonite, right?
right.
He needs to be a little more balanced approach with kryptonite because it's just kryptonite, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the same thing with people that still to this day, they'll try to offer you just one bite of a brownie or one bite of a cookie as if there's some sort of, if it's less than this threshold that you're fine. And for me, the threshold is 0. I mean, even just a little bit it's not worth it for me. I don't want to feel brain fogged. And I think that's something for people to take home is that the little people that want to tempt you and kind of poke at you.
Yeah.
Just let that blow off your shoulder. It's definitely not worth the side effects.
So it really sounds like you were in touch with what your kryptonite was, and then you were committed to kind of cutting that out of your diet to improve your performance.
Eventually, yeah. It sounds simple like that, but it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of days spent, hanging out near the bathroom because my stomach was just flush everything out. But eventually, yeah, it became that simple.
So if you could have gone back in time when you were dealing with all these problems, what would you have told yourself so you could have gotten better faster?
That you should not listen to other people mostly, and that you need to listen to yourself. And that if you go to eat something, I mean, even something like if I were to do a protein shake that probably had sucralose or artificial sweeteners or things that were destroying my stomach, I had this inherent gut feeling that something wasn't right, but I was listening to other people. Yeah, man, you got to take this protein. This is how you get big. This is how you build muscle. And so to go back and answer the question, pay attention to myself or me speaking here. Pay attention to yourself. If your gut's telling you something's not right, it's probably not right. If your heart's telling you that this is not the path that you need to go, that's not the path you need to go. If third shift is killing you and you know it's killing you, you need to quit that job sooner. Don't wait 2 years down the road until you can't even drag yourself out of bed and now you decide that you want to quit, So taking action sooner would probably be the biggest message.
That totally makes sense. And I know you coach patients, I think, from all over the country, right? All over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard with the time schedule once you get past a certain amount of time zones. But yeah,
exactly. So what are the main issues that you're seeing with your patients or clients?
It's always stress related. I mean, I could go in. I probably don't go as deep as you into blood testing and things like that. That's something I'm eventually going to work into. But for me, I don't need to go that deep because if I can just figure out what are the huge stressors that are causing people their issues, I can fix that without ever having to draw a drop of blood. And I would like to get to that level. But at this point, whether it's work stress or even relationship stress, maybe, for example, like the average 42, 45-year-old woman whose husband still wants to eat pizza and ice cream, and he thinks that dieting is stupid and that paleo or anything close to it, a primal or ancestral, whatever type diet, it's a diet. I don't want to do that. And so it's just hard for me to convince the spouse that this isn't a diet. Everyone has a diet. This is going to make the difference between your relationship, because if your mood is jacked up because your gut's jacked up because the diet's not right, I mean, I could probably say that I've saved a couple divorces from happening because I fixed someone's gut by fixing the stress, by fixing the diet, So really that's kind of my approach is if I can just zoom out and see what are the biggest roadblocks. Oh, your husband thinks that what you're doing is stupid. Okay, let's fix that. Usually everything downstream tends to go a little bit smoother.
That makes a lot of sense. And I see it's a lot of the women that are really proactive. And a lot of the guys that I treat, they typically come into my office with their wife or their girlfriend kind of pulling them by the ear. Is that kind of your experience too?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's probably 80% women, 20% men. And the men, I mean, they have trouble admitting that something's wrong, or they have, I don't know, it makes men feel weak to cry and to say that I'm hurting and I'm in pain. And I think we've been conditioned to feel like we have to be so macho. And I've been broken down to the point in tears, man, just from being ill. And
Right.
that's okay. And just being honest with yourself. I mean, that goes really far, as opposed to just repressing your negative emotions.
Right. And a lot of the guys that I see and treat, they're biohackers. They're like at a level and they're like, how can I get to the best level? So you get those kind of guys and they're really great patients. And then you get the other guys that get dragged in. So when you're dealing with a woman, a spouse, their husband, and maybe the husband more than likely is not accepting of some of the diet changes, kind of how do you go about getting everyone on the same page?
Basically just explaining that it's not anything that sounds ridiculous at all. I mean, there's some guys, especially here in Texas, that are hunters that live out in Bastrop or, somewhere outside of Austin, and they're hunters. And it's like, you know what, man, that deer meat is probably the best thing in your diet.
Absolutely.
You have pork rinds and Slim Jims and stuff like that. But man, did you know that what you're eating, that venison there, is probably what I would almost consider a superfood for you? And just breaking it down like that, it blows their mind. It's like, oh, well, I've been hunting for 20 years, man. This is just my way of life. And it's like, okay, well, you're doing the right thing, man. There's just a couple other things that we need to align here. And so I try to reward what they're doing right as opposed to hit on what they're doing wrong and to harp on that. I feel like if you give somebody a compliment, that literally opens the door of perception. And then you can say, hey, but the pasta you're having or the noodles you're putting in your venison chili, that may be something that we should swap out. And then they're a lot more receptive of that message.
Right. So focus on what's going right. Don't complain about what's going wrong.
Yeah, well, I eventually get to what's going wrong.
Of course.
But I definitely try to start.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, in our pre-interview before the show, you mentioned some really cool things that I did not know about you. So you mentioned that you formulate and you worked with Onnit supplementation. Can you talk to me about kind of what your role was in formulating supplements and how you'd go about doing it? Were you researching? Were you experimenting on yourself? Can you kind of touch upon that?
Yeah, sure. It was a really sweet job that I'm not doing anymore. But basically, the CEO of Onnit, his name's Aubrey Marcus, and he's a guy who has a long history of playing with supplements and things like that himself. And he's formulated most of the product line with the help of a couple doctors and things like that. And he always knew about my experience because we have staff meetings where it was kind of like bring your supplements to work day. We had this staff meeting and I brought in this huge backpack and I started talking among the entire staff of like, oh, this is L-theanine. This is, I'm trying to boost GABA levels and, induce a calm state of nervous system. And I just kept going on. Eventually he cut me off. He's like, man, let everybody else go out of the office. Let's talk. And so we started talking about everything I'm up to. And he's like, man, what do you think about the position of helping me work on supplements, whether improving them, making sure the research and the science is backed up behind them, because you know how competitive it is these days. You have to have studies that are going to back up your cordyceps mushrooms, for example, the oxygen utilization that you're going to improving, things like that. So I said, of course, man, that's why I moved down to Austin, was to work for Onnit anyway. So I gladly accepted that position. And I got to try out a couple little top secret behind the scenes, version 2.0s and version 3.0s of supplements that sometimes went really awesome. And sometimes I felt like I had to rip my shirt off and sprint out in the woods, to recover because I got boosted up on too many B vitamins a couple times.
Right.
But it was an awesome experience, and it kind of made me have a deep respect for the combination of nutrients out there, and it really made me respect the position of companies to where they feel like people don't want to have to take 50 pills to get healthy, but you have to be careful and specific on the interactions between different things. And so that was kind of what I learned is, you could, and when you look at science, you could say that, say rhodiola has a good adaptogenic benefit, and you could combine vitamins B5 with it because, B5 is good to support the adrenal glands or something like that. And then,
Right.
vitamin C is good for that too. So, add vitamin C. But just because something makes sense in the science, when you actually put it into a capsule and put it into a human, you may get a different effect. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that was just a takeaway that I learned from it.
Right. So in isolation, things make sense, but when they're combined, they may not quite work the same way you would have thought.
Right. So it's just more power to the thought that you really got to test specifically how do blueberries affect you versus raspberries, or how does this vitamin affect you versus this vitamin. So I did a couple cool things behind the scenes and ran some trials myself on a product that's not out yet, but it was a women's product that was pretty sweet, and I got to do the before and after pictures and things like that. So that gives you a little hint of what I was working on. But
cool.
It was super fun. And then, shortly before my time was up there, I put in a formulation for another product, which may eventually hit the shelf. So if it does, I'm going to be super pumped.
That's great. So based upon what you're at liberty to talk about now, I know there's some stuff that's still in the works you can't touch upon, but what are some of maybe the 3 coolest things or 3 coolest products or things that you learned in your research or in your supplement design that were just the coolest for you?
Well, I would say that part of my job was to work on a product for women. It was basically a thermogenic product. And so immediately when you hear something that hints at fat burning, people automatically think green tea extract, caffeine, all of these metabolism boosting ingredients.
Right.
But for me, when I started digging into the research, first I had to spend a lot of time researching ingredients before I even knew what to put in there, right? And I found out that, for example, the mainstream is taught that fat burning is all metabolism based. And in my experience in working with people, fixing blood sugar and therefore fixing hormone issues and things like that.
Insulin, right.
Yeah, and fixing insulin had far greater impact on fat loss than me just trying to crank somebody up on caffeine. So basically, I kind of disguised what I was working on as a fat burning product, but in reality, it was basically sort of almost like an anti-diabetic supplement with a lot of blood sugar support, some 7-keto in there, and other things that I thought were going to really hit the root cause of why the person was struggling with fat gain anyway, as opposed to just, let me crank you up on caffeine and tell you to jump on a cardio machine. So
that totally makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Huh.
So that was one thing I did that I thought was pretty cool. And then just inside of the research, I think just something that other people could take away from my experience is that to get into PubMed and to look around for ingredients yourself and to do your own research, it's not really that hard. A lot of us in the health community, we love to talk about studies and things like that. And there's a lot of people that only want to hear studies and what the results say and what they are, and that's fine. But the barrier of entry it's really not that bad to just jump on there, and you could just research a couple ingredients on whatever supplement you're taking and see what the science says. And so I think that's pretty sweet. It's easy,
Very cool. So this is awesome because you got this experience and you've kind of well versed around the research and around these topics. What is your favorite adaptogenic herb?
Oh man, I would have to say rhodiola. As you and I talked about on my show, you're taking ashwagandha, and I'm taking that right now, which I know it's sort of more closer to a tonic, some sort of long-term thing, but I really had a lot of good results with rhodiola, especially when I used to work out in the park. There's a place that people can look up called the Parklands. It's in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's 4,000 acres. And so my job was to literally, hike all day. And I was out in the forest. There were a few lakes on the property where I had to walk around and make sure they were clean and inspect the trails, make sure a storm didn't knock a tree down and block a trail so a mountain biker comes along and, dominates himself on a branch.
Right.
So I wanted to have the upper edge on hiking and this sort of walking, this long, steady state, low impact movement. And my diet was good, but I still was pretty fatigued at the end of the day. So I started adding in some rhodiola. I'm sure it was extracted to the 3% Rosavins, I believe you call it.
Exactly.
And so I had to make sure it was a good quality one. But after about a month of taking that every day, I mean, after I got off work, I could do another 8 hours of hiking. And
Wow.
I felt so good. Of course, I was eating a lot of jerky and almonds and things like that throughout the day too to keep me going. But I was really amazed at how just one little simple adaptogen could make a difference in not only my physical strength, but my mental capabilities too. I was listening to podcasts a lot, which also kept me into the health field at the time. And I felt like my memory formation was better. I was processing things better. So it was really amazing to see not only a physical benefit, but a mental benefit too. So rhodiola is my pick.
That's great. And what was the dosage you were using?
500 milligrams.
Just once a day?
Yeah, just once a day.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah.
So when I use adaptogenic herbs, well, let's just back up a little bit. So adaptogenic herbs are a family of herbs that tend to modulate stress. So there are some that help more with the adrenal side of things, where if you're stressed, they actually bring the stress down. If you're under energized, they can actually bring you up. So there are certain families where ashwagandha or Indian ginseng tends to be helpful with anxiety and thyroid. Rhodiola tends to be helpful with depression and mood. Eleuthero for immune system and sex hormones, maca for libido, ginseng for energy. So there's all these different families of herbs, and they really have different kind of a profile on how they help. So you like rhodiola the best, you said, right?
Yeah, and I initially went in. I mean, depression was a huge thing for me, which you brought up. That was a huge thing for me, and I noticed an improvement in that as well. And I'm sure being out in nature, which we could talk about in a little bit, maybe some of the science behind forest bathing and things like that. I was definitely getting my neurotransmitters boosted and or balanced out from being immersed in literally a dense forest with oftentimes a creek running through it. That was a huge impact, but
very cool.
It was nice to see the depression / energy boost from rhodiola. But yeah, adaptogens are awesome.
They are really cool. All right, so that's rhodiola is your number one there. What's your best brain hacking supplement or your favorite?
Oh man, well, so I had free access to Alpha Brain, which is
awesome,
which is on its bestseller, and I
what's in that? Is that Alpha GPC, PQQ?
No PQQ, but okay. Alpha GPC, tyrosine. There's a little bit of theanine in there
for GABA
and phosphatidylserine. Okay. So just a pretty, what's considered more of a balanced brain vitamin. Had a lot of good experience with it. I would say it's definitely in my top 5. Another company, True Brain, I had the guy, Dr. Andrew Hill, the neuroscientist who formulated it. I had him come on my show to talk about why he thinks this is a superior product, and it was full of smart drugs like piracetam and oxiracetam, and also has some alpha GPC, some tyrosine, magnesium, things like that in it. So I took that, and I mean, I was blown away. But those are two separate categories. You know, you're talking smart drugs that are more synthetic as opposed to like a plant-based brain vitamin. So I would say those are probably the top 2. I can't think of any others right off.
What was that brand called by Dr. Andrew Hill?
Yeah, it's called True Brain.
Those nootropics? True Brain. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and so I'm sure they would send you a little care package. What they sent me is the drinks. They're calling it actually the first nootropic drink, and so it's this little packet. Yeah, so it's like a little squeeze pack, basically. It tastes pretty good. I think they sweeten it with stevia or agave or something, but anyway, there's kind of a fun little portable way. But I think I would consider that like level 2 for somebody. I mean, if they already had experience with nootropics and stuff, they could go into that. But to start off by going straight to oxiracetam, which is very potent, I don't think that's necessary for most people.
And would you do that every day, or would you more like just save it for like studying for a test, or you're in like a really intense conference for a weekend and you're learning a lot? Like, when would you use it, and would it be daily?
Definitely not daily for me, and definitely closer to the second thing that you mentioned, conferences. I love to be on adaptogens, especially like Paleo FX, and
Yeah.
come time for conferences, man, I'm pumping extra vitamins and adaptogens there to be on top of my game.
Oh yeah.
And so that's kind of more my use as needed. The first time I had just received it before I was going to take some test for my schooling that I'm going through right now to be a nutritional therapist. And it was a 3-day weekend. And so I took one dosage of it for every day for those 3 days for that entire weekend. And
Yeah.
everyone else was so burnt out and so fatigued by the end of 3 8-hour work days, basically. And I was still feeling pretty good. I was tired, but I mean, I had a huge improvement in recovery, and I didn't get the gas tank didn't get as depleted as much as it normally would have.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of these adaptogenic herbs as kind of you could use them every day because the science on them. The Russians did so much studies in the 50s and 40s and 60s on these adaptogenic herbs on their soldiers, on their astronauts, on their athletes to really improve function. They did lots of long-term studies with great success. So I see the adaptogenic kind of being like an everyday kind of thing, and then some of these nootropics as being like an acute, hey, it's finals time, there's a conference coming up, I got to cram and get this book done, or whatever it is, it's being a more punctuated kind of thing.
Definitely, man. Yeah, you hit it on the head. And for me, I'm always not concerned, but a little bit skeptical and cautious about dipping my toes into certain smart drugs and things like oxiracetam, where if you look in PubMed, you're not going to find anything over 10 or even 20 studies on it. And a lot of the times these were done on rats that were induced with brain disorders. They would give rats Parkinson's or something like that and then test it, which is showing great benefit. But there's just a lack of human studies at this point, which still, I think adds to the barrier of entry for most people.
So what do you think about piracetam or aniracetam? One's water soluble, piracetam, one's fat soluble, oxiracetam. Aniracetam's fat soluble.
I've taken both. I got my dad on piracetam for a while. He was taking a few grams per day because his doctor wanted to prescribe Adderall.
Right.
And I was just like, come on. I've seen way too many people get destroyed by Adderall long term. And maybe you could pitch people in on that too in your experience. But so I tried to get him on piracetam for a while, and he had pretty good benefit. Me personally, piracetam didn't do too much for me, but I didn't take it very long term. I took it maybe for a couple weekends. I also experimented with things on the other end of the neurotransmitter spectrum, like Phenibut, and started playing around with GABA levels. And I tell this funny story. Me and my dad, we went to this place called Huber's in Indiana. It's a winery. And so, you're not supposed to mix stuff that's going to mess with GABA and alcohol. So, anyway, me and my dad.
That's why you're not supposed to drink and then take Xanax, just FYI.
Right. So me and my dad took a little pinch of Phenibut. Some people pronounce it Phenibut, and I'm not trying to get away from your question, but this is in the same category of nootropics here. So we took a little pinch of that, and we went and did a wine tasting. And I don't even think I was 21, so I don't think I drank anything, but my dad did. And I kind of mentioned, Dad, this is, you're adding fuel to the fire here. And so we went through this little wine tasting. He tasted maybe 5 or 6, I'm telling you, just little pinches of wine.
Yeah.
And and by the end of this wine tasting, I mean, he was like cloud 9. I mean, he was feeling good. He wasn't sick or anything, but he was like, oh my God. He's like, I feel like I drink 6 shots of whiskey or something. Like, what's going on? And so that was kind of a lesson for me that this stuff can be very impactful, but nonetheless, it resulted in a hilarious and memorable day.
That's good. And I'm glad to hear that you weren't underage drinking. If you were, though, your secret is safe with us and the podcast listeners, so don't worry.
Thanks for that.
No problem. So you did kind of sidestep my question, so I'm going to come back and corner you a little bit. So you mentioned piracetam, not the best for you. Your dad liked it. What do you think about aniracetam? I know people like Dave Asprey like aniracetam. What's your take on aniracetam?
So I actually have a bottle of aniracetam from when Dave was actually still, I don't even know if you would call it illegally selling aniracetam.
Right.
It ended up getting pulled off because you can't really do that. But
right.
I still have a bottle of it, and I mean, it's great stuff. So when I drove down here to Austin, it's a 15-hour drive from Louisville, Kentucky. When I moved down here, I took 2 capsules of antiracetam, man, and that is by far the greatest thing I could have done to improve my my mental focus, for one, on the road. You know how you can start to get sleepy on road trips.
Yeah.
I was zoned in, man. I was grabbing that steering wheel. I was
You're
jamming to music. I'm like, get me there, you know? And so that is, I'm more of an acute user of it, but honestly, I haven't touched it in the last 6 months, probably even a year. But when I did use it, my brain was on a whole nother level. And while I was driving, of course, a road trip's a good time for anybody to think. My creativity was definitely enhanced.
That's great. I've been doing like the bulletproof coffee with the MCT, and then really hitting up high doses of PQQ with the adaptogenic herbs, and then some of the neurotransmitters for serotonin and dopamine, the 5-HTP and the L-tyrosine. That just like gets my brain on.
Tell me a little bit about PQQ. I'm sure other people are curious about it too.
Yeah, so Dave Asprey put it in one of his new products, and that's a good one too. But PQQ is this pyroquinolate qualine. It's a really long, kind of weird word, but PQQ is the nickname for it. Basically, it's like mitochondria fuel, and it also has the ability to bring back to life damaged mitochondria, which is really cool. So anyone that's not familiar with biochem, your mitochondria basically are like the little powerhouses of the cell that generate ATP and fuel, and it also burns fat for fuel. So a lot of toxins and a lot of drugs actually damage mitochondria. So PQQ is going to help your mitochondria create more energy and also help bring back to life some of the damaged mitochondria from neurotoxins or stress or the environment, whatever.
Sounds like everybody should probably be taking it.
Yeah, I mean, I use that with a combination of CoQ10 on days that I really want to be on, and it's like, boom, ready to go.
That's great. Well, thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, and you like this True Brain, so I like that. I'm going to give them a call and try some of this.
Yeah, definitely. I can just email him and forward your email over to him, and they'd love to hear from you. And he would be a good guest for your show as well. He's got tons of experience working with addiction and rebalancing neurotransmitters and things like that. So you guys would hit it off.
Awesome. Thanks.
No problem.
So tell me a little bit more about your REM rehab. I know you mentioned a lot about kind of getting out in nature to kind of reset things from a sleep rhythm, from just a stress rhythm. I know you got this new stress program that's out. Can you talk more about your REM rehab and just some of your experiences with nature?
Yeah, so REM rehab, it was basically, like I mentioned, I struggled first and then solved my own health problems. And so that's why I created it, because sleep issues are epidemic. I mean, it's 70+% of the population. I mean, probably 100 million or more people are struggling in the United States alone from chronic sleep deprivation and sleep-related issues. And so basically this program, it's an ebook, an audio book, and then 4 hours of interviews with naturopathic doctors and other people to give their specific lens on sleep. But then I go into eating for sleep, making sure that you're getting good quality meats that are going to provide the raw materials to make your neurotransmitters.
Tryptophan, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and kind of explaining the process of the conversion from tryptophan over to serotonin and the cofactors that eventually lead to melatonin. And I kind of explain why vegetarians and vegans that come to me, they have horrible sleep because they may be eating some nuts, but they're not getting the quality meats that are going to provide these raw materials to make neurotransmitters for sleep. So kind of dispelling some myths there. But then also after providing eating for sleep information, I go into some more, I guess you would call it biohacking protocols, using things like light therapy. So for example, the average indoor light bulb under fluorescent lighting, someone in an office that's exhausted, you're getting maybe 500 lux, which is a measurement of brightness. And I was using a 10,000 lux light box.
Wow.
And I was using that before I went to work because obviously I was doing the vampire shift. So I was using a light box at 11:30 to basically trick my brain and basically biohack to teach my brain that it's morning when technically it's midnight and I'm about to go in for a 5-hour shift. So not saying that people need to do that, but light therapy is one of the protocols that I use in that program to help people reset their circadian rhythms. If there's someone who is freezing, like you mentioned, you're from Boston. If you're in Boston this time of the year, you are freezing and you probably don't want to go outside. So it'd be much more easy to convince you to use a light box in the comfort of your home instead.
Right.
So that's one thing. And then also I talk about sensory deprivation tanks. I'm a big proponent of using float tanks to basically not only help for meditation purposes, which can clear the mind and allow you to sleep. So I'm hitting on the mental aspect of sleep, but also just the transdermal absorption of magnesium is super, super helpful for relaxing the nervous system and allowing you to fall asleep easier. So that's just some of the kind of stuff that's in REM rehab, but people can check it out on my website if they'd like. And
yeah, we're going to put links to this, Evan, in the show notes. So anyone that really wants to dig a little bit deeper, which, I deal with patients all the time with sleep issues. So I'm going to have to get this and read it myself, see if I can pick up some more tidbits. So we'll put it in the show notes, and feel free and click on it and support Evan.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll send it right over to you.
So without giving away too much, because we want people to get the book, what are like one or two, just from a lifestyle perspective, that people can do to help improve their sleep?
Well, I think so much in the modern world, we're so focused on killing it and crushing it. And you see all these social media pictures and posters about you being a sissy if you're not working 80-hour work weeks and all of that. And I think that's ridiculous. I really do. I'm all about being productive. You and I both are fans of increasing our productivity and
absolutely
the minimal effective dose of whether it's exercise or blog writing or whatever.
Yes.
We want to crank it out and get it done, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm not a fan of this work until you die mentality. And it's really detrimental to the body, but just to your happiness. And a lot of sleep issues stem from the fact that people are just working, and they're not meditating. They're not spending time outside ever. They're not spending time in nature specifically. And so at night, the mind is going sort of through this mental detox. Like, look, man, you've never thought about how you're enjoying your current life. You've never thought about what you said to your wife last night at the dinner table. And so now this stuff's going to come up because you know what? You haven't taken the required time that humans have always had. When we were hunting and gathering, all this time spent out on the trail walking. I think that was a time for mental decompression, and we simply don't have that. So one of the things that I hit on is the fact that you have to integrate some sort of either meditation practice, whether it's even just a 5 or 10 minute walk around the block,
right?
Something to open these channels of thought to really expel some of these pent up emotions and pent up thoughts so that they're not keeping you up at night. And I think that's huge.
Good. And what do you think about grounding or earthing? I mean, you got like the earthing mats. I sleep on one of those. What do you think about going barefoot outside before bed? What are your takes on earthing or grounding?
Yeah, so it's definitely in the hacking sleep protocol. It's right there next to float tanks. I was sort of skeptical of earthing mats and things like that before. I definitely have one, and I sleep on one a few nights a week myself. But it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where people have to have some scientific explanation. It's like there's not even a need to explain it. We've always been bare feet. We've always been immersed in nature. We were always touching the grass or touching the dirt or touching the trees. So to be skeptical about the idea that could heal and even reduce inflammation and improve your sleep quality, I mean, it's a no-brainer. So yeah, I love the idea of earthing. And for people that are traveling over multiple time zones, I'd say anything more than like 3 or 4 time zones, that's the best thing you can do. I told my dad when he flew over to China for work, and I told him, I said, Dad, when you get over there, you're going to be jacked up. You need to make sure that you get your bare feet on some grass over there and take a little bit of melatonin to make sure that you're going to adjust. And he said that it helped him. So
yeah, and I think just to add on to that, I think exactly what you said, and taking the melatonin at sunset, but also being grounding and watching the sun rise is really helpful. Gets that pineal gland and the hypothalamus just like, all right, this is the new rhythm now. Sun's coming up, cortisol needs to come up now. So I totally agree.
Yeah, and I also try to have this undertone of adding spirituality to your overall life. I mean, we're spiritual creatures by nature, and that doesn't automatically infer religion or anything but we are spiritual creatures. I mean, even the Native Americans thought that the rocks and the wind and the water and the trees all spoke and had this certain alive energy, and they are alive. And I think just trying to reframe your current outlook on nature. I mean, you could work in a 50-floor high-rise in New York City while you're listening to this show, but you're still dependent on the natural world for your produce, for your water, for the very food that you eat that sustains you. And so I think trying to bridge the gap between that disconnection to the natural world can be really helpful for not only reducing your stress, but therefore improving your sleep quality.
Great question. You touched upon one of those trigger words for me, spirituality. It's a very abstract word, so I want to dig a little bit more into that, of how someone could be more spiritual. Is that more about gratitude, about realizing you're part of something bigger, giving forward to your community, saying thanks for the food you eat? Well, what does that mean to you, and how can our listeners try to be a little more spiritual?
Yeah, I would say a gratitude journal is the best place to start. Actually, I just had to look at a study yesterday talking about how people like you and I, people that are healthcare practitioners,
Right.
are chronically stressed and
Right.
more stressed than the average person. And so they took some nurses and had them do either a complaint or a gratitude journal. And then, of course, there was a control group. And they had these nurses fill out a gratitude journal only twice per week for 4 weeks. And that was enough to significantly reduce their stress. And I'm pretty sure they threw the word spirituality in there somewhere, because that was the context I was searching for. But I mean, healthcare practitioners aside, anybody could add gratitude to their life. It's so easy to get caught up in what, the first world problems and things like that we really lose sight of the great luxuries that we have presented to us. I mean, a light switch, the availability of clean drinking water, things like that. Those are super amazing things that would blow the minds of people across the planet today. And
I totally agree.
It's easy to forget that we have that, man. So every time I even take a drink of spring water, it's not like I'm bowing down to it, but I just try to I'm so thankful for this water that's going to hydrate me right now.
I agree.
So.
I think you hit it right on the head, is really just realizing, we're a part of something deeper, and then really having gratitude and thanks and a humility for it. I start my day personally. I wake up, I get my shoes on, and I do some breathing to really change my state. And I go into a state of gratitude for about 5 to 8 minutes, just as I'm walking, and I'm just kind of talking to myself or thinking out loud of just all the things in my life that I'm thankful for. And it's a huge shift in the stress.
Oh man, that's beautiful. You're already a proponent, and it sounds like you're already experiencing the results too, which matters the most.
Especially a lot of the people that listen to our show, they're doers, they're executives, they're entrepreneurs, they're out there doing, and it's so easy when you're motivated to be just focusing on what's next, and you're focused on getting to point B, but you're like haven't looked behind you and seen how far you've gone from A to B, and you got to like kind of have some gratitude and thanks for that.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of that myself. I see the podcast stats, and I've hit like 23 on the top health charts. And I'm like, man, I want to be top 10.
Yeah.
I feel like my content is top 10 worthy, but yet I don't realize that just 2 years ago, I was in my bedroom just scribbling on a little notebook of this idea of what's now called Not Just Paleo, and I had to basically slap myself and say, look, man, look where you've came from. You were just a college kid struggling, and now you're helping people. And it's kind of a slap to the face to really let me reframe and appreciate the journey that I've been on myself. And I think everybody could do some sort of reframing activity like that and find that there's a lot to be grateful for.
I totally agree. And I think it has a huge help and a huge support on the neurotransmitters and on the adrenals. And I've talked to and worked with a lot of professional athletes, and when you work with people at a high level, even for them, it never ends. Like, okay, let's say your goal is to get to the NFL or the NBA, right? Once you're there, now the goal is to be the best, to win the World Cup, or to win the national championship, or now it's to be the all pro and get the MVP. So it never ends, even at the highest level. So it's like you got to just stop resetting yourself and really have some gratitude, because it would just never end, no matter how good you're at.
Oh, definitely. I think that's part of why we've come to what we are. I mean, if the caveman was happy with the cave, he never would have built a hut. And if the guy who built the hut was happy with the hut, he never would have built the village and then the civilization. And then now we have the mansion, and then you have the speedboat, but now you want a faster boat, you want a bigger boat, So it's just, it's cool to do that. It's awesome to continually advance. And I think that's what makes us a great species, but also we got to appreciate the small wins and look at where we've become. I mean, even a light bulb, something like that would have blown your great grandparents' minds,
I think that's really great. Our human needs are infinite. And I totally agree. Just that kind of little exercise and recentering is important. You touched upon meditation. Can you talk about what someone could do if they wanted to get into meditation? Right now, I use the Headspace app because it's like meditation for dummies. It kind of holds my hand through it and it kind of creates accountability for me. But what are you doing right now for your meditation, and what can our listeners do?
Sure. I would just say go for a walk outside.
Yeah.
I happen to live on a place where there's a patch of land here that's about 50 acres of forest. And I think that's the easiest level of entry. No matter where you are, I know you may be in the city, but I guarantee there's some place you can go and just go for a walk out in nature, whether it's with your dog or just by yourself. And I think that's the best way to get introduced to the idea of meditation. If you're somebody who's heard of it and all you can picture is just somebody sitting there with headphones and binaural beats and their eyes closed and legs crossed and all that, I'm a big fan of moving meditation. And
huge fan.
Yeah, I mean, and you could probably attest to what happens in your morning walk that you've alluded to. There's got to be some meditative aspect to that. Otherwise, you wouldn't continue doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I just want to shift gears just backwards a little bit and kind of bring it back to your book, REM Rehab. You mentioned a couple of things there about melatonin. And I use melatonin. I try not to get my patients on it every night unless I see it low on a lab test. I always want to get to the root cause of it. But what's your take, because you're a supplement researcher as well, what's your take on melatonin, on the pineal gland, on the various feedback loops? What's your take on it? Is it safe to use every day? What doses? And how do you kind of wrap your head around that?
Definitely not safe for everyday usage. Mm-hmm. It's definitely overprescribed, overabused, overused, and the whatever you call it, alternative health, self-help health category. I mean, it's ridiculous. You'll see 5-10 milligram melatonin tablets. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and I found that the pineal gland is only going to secrete micrograms. I mean, not even a milligram in most cases. And maybe your lab results, you can fill us in more, but I have never seen the reason to use anything over a milligram, maybe 3 milligrams at the most, an acute use dose. If you're doing some extreme traveling, you're just really having some issues with setting your circadian rhythm. Maybe you've just, I don't know, went on a vacation in another part of the world and your rhythm is just so screwed. But it's literally sort of the only use if emergency, break the glass open and pull out the bottle and use it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same approach. I try to only use melatonin to reset my cycle for the week if I've been up late. And I only recommend it to patients that, again, have low melatonin on their lab test. And then we'll use, again, I try to do about 0.5 milligram for myself, or at the most 1 milligram. So I'm in that same boat as you, same camp.
Yeah, so I had access to the melatonin, these little chewable tablets that also contained lemon balm and things like that. And so it's a 5 milligram tablet. So if and when I needed to use it, I would literally just nibble a corner and then boom, and then that would be it. And so I'm going to guess that was probably half, maybe 0.75 milligram, and that was enough to do the job.
That's great. Awesome. So I think now we're going to wrap up the show here, but before we do that, I want to just give you an opportunity just to kind of fill in our listeners what the 3 most powerful things are that you're doing right now that would help them in their lives.
I feel like a broken record, but honestly, going for daily walks in nature.
Cool. Right
after you and I get off here, I'm probably going to go for another walk. We finally got sunshine back in Austin again.
Great. Yes, it's great out today.
Number 2, I would say to cultivate and nourish love in whatever aspect. I mean, I got married in July, so I'm still pretty much a newlywed, but just really feeding into love and feeding into a relationship, whether it's, I don't care if you love your dog and that's all you have to love right now. Just loving something It really is a powerful thing. And you've heard so many quotes throughout your life, some of them cheesy, some of them really profound about love, overpowering fear. But that's a good one. And then thirdly, I would just try to create some sort of plan on paper for your life. There's a lot of people that are listening to your show that want to take it to the next level, like you've mentioned. And you're focused on B. You can see B. You know what point B is. You know that you want to have your own business. You want to become a health coach, whatever it is. But the road to get there, and I'll tell you myself, it's not going to go the way you expect it to go. It's going to have tons of ups and downs. Some months are going to be so much better than others. Some years are going to be better than others. You've been in the health field much longer. You could attest that there's an ebb and a flow to success. And everybody's achieving success in some shape or form. But my recommendation for you is to write down just simple little baby steps. To how do you get there? What is the first step? For example, if you wanted to start a podcast, you first need to figure out where you get a microphone.
Yeah.
And okay, now what do I want to talk about? Who do I want to interview? And so instead of you just visualizing the end result that you want to have a top-rated health podcast and you're changing millions of lives across the planet, that's cool. But just start by figuring out how you even hold a microphone and speak into a microphone properly.
Exactly. I remember that journey last year. I get it. You got to break it up into small little baby steps. That makes a lot of sense.
So that's number 3.
Evan, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to have you back next year. We really appreciate the great info, and I think the listeners will love it too.
Well, thanks for having me, man. You're an awesome dude and an awesome host. So I wish you the best of success, and you're going to continue to change lives with this show. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Evan. You as well.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to beyondwellnessradio.com/question. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.